Yeah, righty. Coughing right when I come on. Here we are. We're in the middle of the week, heading into week 13. Fletch and Randy in the corner, talking about college football. Lots to get to. We're going to recap the big games from last week, get into last night's CFP rankings in between the basketball games. Real quick on Facebook, give us a like on YouTube, hit the bells for notifications, and make sure you subscribe to the channel to keep tabs on everything that we are doing here at the Fletch Entertainment Network. W, you can see it down there. Go to w.gg, type in FE Network to get your 10%, and have some delicious tasting energy drink that won't leave you jitterless. And all that being said, I'm going to start the show off by saying that only here in the corner can you get something like this. I'm a Buckeye fan. Randy's an Alabama fan. But Randy and I call it like it is. He picked his team to not win last week, and he was right.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most aggravating things that I've ever watched. I did, just because of the history I had talked about that with Oklahoma, but I had no idea that Alabama was going to absolutely dominate every stat there is other than the score. And of course, the three turnovers made it. But I was looking at it, and I think that Oklahoma's done this twice now, where they have 200 yards of offense and like 11 first downs versus 24 first downs and 430 yards of offense, and they win the game. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they did the same thing against Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy.
But the bottom line is, you got to win the game. And one of the things that really stood out to me, and we can get into the other games, but I'll go ahead and say this is, I watched Ty Simpson, which at one point and he had a 6-game run or whatever you want to call it, where he was really looking good. But I watched him, then I watched Texas, and I'm like, I don't know if I've ever seen two quarterbacks mirror each other more than Ty Simpson and Arch Manning. And what I mean by that, if you watch them, they both do a lot of the same things. They both hold the ball too long, take sacks that they should never take. They both are going through a lot of drops from their receivers, backs, and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of drops in the game for both of them. And they both overthrow the receivers an awful lot right now. So I'm watching those two guys. I'm like, they could trade teams and nobody would ever know the difference. I really thought, more I watched it, I'm like, man, these guys mirror each other in what they're doing. But yeah, the Alabama game was really a frustrating game to watch with the way that went. And of course, don't have a kicker and kick a field goal.
Yeah. Yeah, they both those quarterbacks are first-year starters too, so that's a little bit of correlation between them. Although I think Arch Manning's been in his program longer than Ty Simpson, but I don't know that for a fact. I don't know how long Ty Simpson's been with the Crimson Tide. So, yeah, I was watching that game unfold, on the score, and I kept looking back, and it was somewhat of a up and down game. Of course, when you're doing that, you're not seeing what's going on until you see the box score later and see how Alabama dominated the game in the stat book. Just didn't put it in the end zone or made bad mistakes at very bad times that cost them points. Obviously the pick six was a touchdown, and then the muffed punt ended up being I think a touchdown. So
the fumble with the quarterback sack.
Oh, right, yeah.
I think they had 17 points off of Alabama turnovers. But
right.
Yeah, that was tough to watch. Maybe, but that's football. Tough game. Alabama being at home. I had a bad feeling about that game. With the history they've had with Oklahoma, things just don't seem to go well when they play Oklahoma. But I sure didn't see it unfolding the way it did.
That is crazy. Kudos to you for calling that. That's a tough one. I don't know if I've ever called out, that my team's going to lose, but I'm not saying I wouldn't, whenever it comes up. But I probably never will against a team up north, even if I think they will. That's just a gospel thing there. But you can't do that. But so that was a crazy, crazy game this past weekend. Looking at some of the scores from last weekend. Friday night, Clemson clips Louisville by 1 point, and if anybody watched that game, you saw Louisville go down the field, kick it, score a touchdown, and miss an extra point, and they lost by 1. That's a key issue there.
Yeah, kicking game certainly come into play there. And then there's probably not a, I don't know if you want to call it exciting or comeback, whatever you call it, was the South Carolina game with Texas A&M. That was unbelievable because Fletch had texted me and he's like, man, what if you look at South Carolina? And I was like, well, we have our upset. I already wrote it off,
Yeah.
Upset, and you said maybe. I was like,
so I think it said for now.
Yeah,
I wasn't talking about that one not staying that way. I'm talking about another upset, maybe. You're up 30-3 at halftime.
Wow.
I don't know anybody that loses that game. That was not to mention pretty much lost in the third quarter. They scored 21 points in the third quarter, and then took the lead in the fourth. That of course I had to stay up and watch the highlights and stuff, but that was incredible. What a colossal collapse. I saw the score and I thought, well, this is the one game that it's going to save Shane Beamer's job, and this is going to be the one game where they put everything in the one and now A&M is going to drop down, and it didn't happen. So wow, that's a wow game.
Yeah, that was incredible. Then at the very end, A&M getting ready to score another touchdown to go up 8 points, and they ran a crazy play. An absolute crazy play that gave the ball back to South Carolina, and I was like, "You guys run a stupid play like it on the 1 yard line. I hope South Carolina takes it the other way and kicks it or something." But yeah, that was something else, that the comeback that they put on, and I don't know what the heck was going on with South Carolina. It's like it didn't even show up in the second half. They good enough field position to kick a field goal or something. My goodness,
it looked like, from the sound of it, that both teams went into the locker rooms and switched jerseys and came back out.
Yeah.
Because they did the exact opposite, both of them did, of what they did in the first half.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Absolutely nuts. And, of course, Pitt was absolutely no match whatsoever for Notre Dame, as a lot of people were billing that game to be a tough one on the road for Notre Dame to do. Didn't happen. Notre Dame was just cruising along. BYU took care of TCU. Some of the, Miami, NC State, that team that everybody talked about, that great offense, 41-7 Miami. So now the real great game that went down to the wire, Georgia Tech and Boston College. What a back and forth game, and Tech eked that one out at the end to stay alive for the ACC, the all chaos conference, as they're calling it. And of course USC held off. Iowa had a big lead on USC, and it was a rainstorm out there. And USC came back hard, got that one late, 26-21. I called Iowa to win that, and man, they should have, but they didn't. So that's the way it goes, But a nice win for USC, there's no doubt.
Yeah, we thought maybe Texas and Georgia might be a good game. That wasn't a good game.
Yeah. Georgia, it's almost like don't look now, but don't forget. Georgia's right there at number 4 now. We'll talk about that. And they're number 4, sitting in a good position that nobody's really talking about Georgia a whole lot. But they're putting together a nice, pretty good season, and they're starting to play complete games now.
They are.
They're going to be a problem for whomever. There's no doubt.
Yes. Yeah,
no doubt.
I agree.
And especially with Kirby at the helm. Yeah. They're going to be relevant. I think it's going to be a little different than last year, where they won the SEC. I think, is that right? They're defending SEC champions. They beat Texas, Georgia.
Yes.
So they got the bye last year, and they went and played Notre Dame and got beat. So
yeah, they got beat by
I don't see that happening this coming year. That's for sure with them. So
two teams that really look good. Eye test and everything else are Georgia and Notre Dame. They both look really. They look like they're getting stronger, and that's what you want when you're coming into the end of the season, especially with a 12-team playoff coming on. And that's two teams that are certainly looking stronger as they move forward.
Yeah, let's bring that up here. I got that on this page because as you can see, I got it blown up here so we can see it pretty good. But Georgia's right there at 4 now. They moved up one spot. You see here, everybody moves up one except for Oklahoma jumps up 3. Alabama went down 6. They're at the 10 spot.
Right.
But they're still. I think they're in a great shape because they still in charge of their own destiny to get to the SEC championship game. And even then, I think they're not large unless they just really do something weird and lose the last 2, which I don't think anybody's going to predict that. Even you won't predict that. So, but the one thing interests me, I'm going to scroll down here just a little bit more. Is I'm going to get them on there. Here we go. We got Miami at 13. Notre Dame at 9. And they're both got the same record, and I always thought when you have the same record, head-to-head matters. But apparently in this it doesn't, even though it's not the final one. But I don't see them all of a sudden flipping that around if it was the final one. So it's almost like they're saying, we think Notre Dame's a better team than Miami. And I'm not saying they're not. I mean, trust me, if I had to pick between these two, I think Notre Dame is a better team. That doesn't mean Miami isn't a good team and can really light up the scoreboard. They've got some flaws. But the head-to-head's got to matter, and for some reason here it's not mattering, and that's a big spot of contention for a lot of people since last night. Is why isn't head-to-head mattering in this particular instance? And I think there's a couple others too, like Georgia and Alabama. They both, but then again, Georgia only got one loss, so that's why they stay up there, and that's how it should be because all things aren't equal. So.
Well, these teams aren't. I agree with what you're saying, and we've talked about that before. That head-to-head should definitely come into play.
Right.
But also, you have teams that, as the season has gone on, and we were just talking about it a little bit, that 2 of the best-looking teams were Notre Dame and Georgia. So they're certainly passing the eye test, and I think people are going, well, these are 2 of the better teams right now. And you look at Miami. They're still taking care of business, but they've had a couple missteps here and a couple closer games that maybe shouldn't have been so close. And that makes, I guess, that's the only thing I can figure that they're looking at on this thing. But I'm like, if they said, who you taking right now, Miami or Notre Dame, I would take Notre Dame.
Yeah, and honestly, in my opinion, and I think it's Notre Dame has not looked like they were going to lose a game since the first 2, which were nail-biter games, and Miami has had some close calls, and so, and they have lost, but they've lost more recently just because Notre Dame lost the first 2 of the season. They have lost since. Miami went a few weeks before they started losing, and who they lost to Louisville, which was a good team, but they're not a super great team. But the funny thing is, Notre Dame's getting more love for losing to Miami than Miami is getting for beating Notre Dame, which is kind of funny. Yeah. But I think it's the whole thing. It's not just head-to-head boom. It's let's look at the whole season. And Notre Dame is definitely trending upwards, and I don't think Miami might be going like this a little bit. And of course, 41-7 last week looks a little nicer, but Notre Dame hasn't had one of them. They've just been going up. So I definitely think, much like you, that I think Notre Dame is the better team, and so, but head-to-head, it is weird because I think, okay, if this is my team, would it irk me a little more that the head-to-head's not mattering? And I don't know. You want to say you want to call it like it is, and this is just a little squirrely, and there's still plenty of time for this to work itself out, which it might, I don't think you or I would say there's no way Miami could lose another game because we've seen last year. We know what happened.
Yeah.
Notre Dame too. Both of them are capable of losing. They're not invincible, if you will. So,
right.
But it is curious, no doubt. And then another team I think that looks really good, in addition to the Georgia and Notre Dame, is Texas Tech. Now that they got their quarterback back, there were little problems they had. Their quarterback was out. He's back, and they look tough. And they should, if they don't handle the Big 12, then they're not who we thought they were, because they should handle the Big 12 and get right in, and they're up there at 5 now. Right. So that'd be really interesting. If they host a game, you look right now. If something happens in the top, right now Georgia's going to get a bye, but if they happen to get jumped by somebody, which I guess is somewhat possible, depending on with Ohio State and Indiana 1 and 2, Texas A&M. If Texas A&M gets beat by Texas, Georgia might jump them, in 2 weeks, the last week of the regular season, and that puts Georgia up at 3. But if Texas Tech jumps Georgia or something, that'll put them down. Georgia hosted a game. Georgia probably wouldn't mind hosting a game. You never know. And they won't play in the SEC championship game potentially, and then they get a home game. That's probably a nice trade off.
Well, one of the most interesting things coming up is these conference championship games. How's that going to affect the standings, and is the committee going to penalize a team for losing a conference game
Absolutely.
While you have a team sitting there doing nothing and gaining ground? Certainly, that would be that's going to be another hot mess, because I'm sure that's going to happen.
It's interesting. Ohio State and A&M, if everything goes the way it goes, they'll play each other in the Big Ten championship.
Right.
They're both undefeated. So whoever loses, should that team drop out of the top 4, because it's an extra game. I don't have the answer to that, but that's one of the questions. Then, of course, the SEC is the same way with Texas A&M, but it's not Georgia now. It's Alabama at this point. It could be Georgia, but certain things have to happen because Alabama beat Georgia. But nonetheless, they're not going to bring Alabama all the way up jump everybody if they beat Texas A&M. No big deal. So it's just going to be interesting. Now, but a team like Texas Tech, whoever they play, isn't going to be a great team. If they lose that championship game, how does that affect them? Because not only did they lose it, they lost to a team that may not even be ranked or ranked really low. Right. Same with the ACC. So it's kind of a weird thing, They shouldn't lose that game. So now all of a sudden, did you lose? Yeah, you lost, and you lost to an inferior team versus losing to somebody that's literally right where you're at. 10-0, 11-0, whatever. So that is interesting. I don't think they should penalize the teams for playing the extra game, but 59-0 or something. I mean, I don't know. I mean, weirder things have happened in the year of weird, as we've been saying the last few weeks. It's very possible that the craziness, can occur.
Well, you have, you look, you sit there and look at this, and two things come to my mind. One, Alabama has put themselves in the same spot that they were in a year ago.
Yep.
If they go to, last year when it was Oklahoma knocked them out of the playoffs. Now this year they go to Auburn, which is at Auburn. And Auburn's really not as bad a team as their record, because they have so many close games, and
right.
they get Alabama at home at night. They can knock Alabama completely out of this thing.
Yep.
So I mean that wouldn't be a shocker. And then the other thing I was going to say, looking at, so you have Ohio State and Indiana sitting there, and then if things stay the way they are, then you have a Texas A&M. Georgia, Texas Tech. Now let's just play, even Oregon. Well, Oregon lost to Indiana, but so you look at those two games. So let's just say Ohio State blows out Indiana. I mean, just blows them out. Like they have in championship games before. They beat them by three touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, or whatever.
Right.
How far does Indiana fall? Do they fall down behind Georgia and Texas Tech and Ole Miss?
It's very interesting, because if it's a close game, that's one thing, but if they get blown out, right. it's a late game as far as the last game of the season. It's an extra game, but then you're getting blown out by the number 1 team in the nation. So is it all that? But being blown out is being blown out. I think it always is going to look worse than just losing a tight game that you had a chance to win. Being manhandled and blown out. I definitely think they fall down and probably into the because they're undefeated. They go down into the 5, 6, 7, 8 category to host a game. I don't think they put them down at 9 or 10. I think that might be a little bit too far.
Oh no, they wouldn't drop them down that far. We're only talking of 2 or 3 spots, but knock them out of that top 4. And that's if the how much the committee puts into what we were just talking about, how much they put into these conference championship games.
And here's another thing to think about is they're playing an extra game as a championship game. If they get knocked down to 5, 6, 7, and 8, somewhere in there, now they're playing an extra game as a home game instead of a bye. So they got 2 extra games. Where last year, the bye, the conference champions got the bye, and then so like Penn State had to play the extra game. They played the championship game, lost to Oregon, and then they hosted a game, so they had that. So it's almost like 2 extra games. because you went and didn't win your conference championship. It's just the way it is, but that definitely could happen.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I mean. That's the two things that came to my mind, and you know, if it's one versus two, it certainly shouldn't be a three score game, 4 score game.
Right.
I mean, that definitely would have to come into play. I mean, I would imagine it would be more, you know, even a 2 score game. It could be close enough. 10 points, 13 points, whatever could be close enough. But I mean, that's just things that you look at as we're winding down on this thing that's going to make it really interesting. But I mean, as the way they have them right now, I don't really have a problem with it. I think it's probably pretty daggone close to what I had or what I figured would come out.
Right.
I don't think there was any really big surprises.
Another interesting point. Yeah, I don't see. I thought I was a little like, wow, Texas jumped pretty far. Texas and Alabama, 7-6, and I thought, okay, Alabama loses to Oklahoma. Oklahoma's put together a pretty good season so far. So I just thought, okay, that's fine. But I thought it was a little. I wouldn't think it'd be quite that low. It wasn't huge, maybe 1 or 2 spots. So it's not that big of a deal. When you look at the Big Ten, of course, we got Indiana and Ohio State, and Ohio State plays Michigan. If Michigan beats Ohio State, heaven forbid, but you call 911 to make sure I'm still alive. But if Michigan beats Ohio State, Michigan has a loss to USC. So USC with 2 losses in conference, they lost to Illinois, and then they lost to we just talked about the other day, and now I can't remember who it is. I'll think of it in a minute though. So or maybe they're a 1-loss team in the conference. I'll have to go over here and look at that real quick. Standings, and go to the Big Ten. I want to say there are 2 though, but because
I think they do have.
I should have prepared for this. This is live on the air, folks. So in the conference, USC is, they're a 1-loss team. So their other losses out of conference must have been earlier in the season. Then Michigan is a 1-loss team. So if they beat Ohio State, there's a 3-way tie. But what's going to happen right here this week is one of these teams is going to get a loss because USC goes to Oregon.
Right.
If USC beats Oregon, they've got the inside track to be, it will be a 4th team to get in from the Big Ten. Because Oregon to overtake Oregon, then they got the tiebreaker against Michigan, and they would go to the Big Ten championship game and play Indiana, because Indiana probably isn't going to lose. And then if Oregon wins and beats USC, and Michigan beats Ohio State, then Oregon will go to, because they're tied and they beat USC where Michigan lost to USC.
Yeah.
So this game right here, USC and Oregon's got big dividends potentially if Michigan can beat Ohio State. If not, it won't matter. So that's some other interesting tidbits there and stuff. So
it could matter as far as the standings go. If USC number 16 comes in and knocks off Oregon number 7,
right?
I mean, it could definitely have an effect there by dropping Oregon down some spots.
Yeah, and USC will move up. Yeah, they might almost just kind of flip them. Maybe not exact numbers, but USC will go into the top 10 and Oregon would come out. Something like that, maybe. I'm guessing if whoever wins that game is going to have a nice stranglehold inside the top 10 somewhere.
Well, you'd have
a
real argument over those 2-loss teams at that point.
Yeah, and they'll definitely come into play with hide this when we get back to us. Against other 2-loss teams throughout the other Power Fours, to see which teams look better. And I mean, who would have thunk it? But those teams, one thing that USC did really well when they hosted Michigan was they stopped the run. And Michigan, that's what they lived on, and they couldn't run against USC. They figured them out somehow. So if USC can play like that, but they get into the CFP and they're run stoppers to a certain degree or better, that'll play nice for them, because obviously trenches mean everything, as we always know, and in big games, whoever wins the trenches usually controls the game. Barring any injuries, or I'm sorry, turnovers.
Well, doesn't Michigan have one of their top running backs is out?
Both. They're on their 3rd stringer.
Well, a little bit easier to stop them whenever they have their main guys in there,
Well, yeah, there's no doubt. But even the 3rd string guy last week went over 100. It was Northwestern, but still. But they almost lost the game. They're really bad in the passing game. Young quarterback, a lot of issues there. Michigan lives on defense and running the game. There's no doubt. And even though that's good, most of the time when you're like that, kind of one-sided, you only get so far, whether it's passing or running. You really got to have continuity in both. And if you got a great defense and you can't do both, your defense gets pretty tired by the fourth quarter. Again, barring injuries and barring turnovers and stuff like that. I think they did a good. This has been kind of an interesting year with the CFP. They've been calling it pretty clean. Where I don't disagree with them about the Miami Notre Dame thing. I'm just wondering how I guess that it's not just about head to head. It's about that and the whole body of work. That's what I was trying to think of.
Oh yeah, the guy. I don't know if you've seen it. The guy explained it exactly why they put it the way they did. I was just listening to it earlier today. And,
okay. Yeah, I didn't see that. What did he say?
I can't remember. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he
left a lasting impression.
He was talking about the eye test and how they look now versus how they look back then, and how they look. I listened to it, but I guess I didn't really listen to it.
Right.
To really take it in, because I thought it was. I didn't see a big issue with the way they had them ranked, but if I had a bigger issue, I'd probably listen a lot better.
Right. I guess the one thing that let me see here, get rid of that. Because the one thing that would be a little concern to me, but I think if it happened this way, it wouldn't be the same as if, right going into the final week in the CFP, if they excuse me, if somebody had just beat somebody, like that's when they played. They played last week of the season, they just beat them, and then they go in and they don't have them ahead of them. They're both on playoff teams. I think that's where it's got to matter, because it's both late in the season. They probably have similar records. Most of the teams are going to have either 0, 1, or 2 losses. I doubt a 3-loss team is going to get in. Would have been Texas. They're not looking like they play the part. It'd be really hard. They're 3 losses now, and they need to run the table. And I think for them to be even close to get in, they got to blow out A&M when they play them to really give themselves a shot at being an at-large.
Otherwise, I don't think they're getting in.
Yeah, I don't think so. I really don't.
I don't see it.
So yeah,
if I found that to see exactly what he said. Now that I opened my mouth, of course, anytime I go to look for something, I can't find it.
Oh yeah, that's how it is.
But anyways, they did explain it. Somebody wants to look it up, I'm sure they can find it.
But I'm sure it's something in the realm of, because one thing is, I think Notre Dame is a very well-rounded team. They run good, they pass good, they control the game. They, like I said, they haven't been in a game where they're fighting themselves to get back and almost getting beat. They had a dogfight with USC and had dogfights earlier in the year that they lost by a couple points, but those were against great teams, and then all the other teams, they haven't had a horrible team. Even last year they lost to Northern Illinois. This year they don't have a team on their schedule that didn't look good, that gave them a whole lot of fits and almost cost them a game. So that's, I think as a strength of record, kind of like how you look controlling the game or whatever. It's one thing, one of the big arguments about Ohio State is haven't played anybody. Well, you can't control who you play other than your non-conference. They scheduled Texas, of course that was 5 years ago when they scheduled these games. Texas look like they're going to be pretty good, and they're not a horrible team, but they just weren't what everybody thought they would be coming into this year. He's not the Heisman hopeful anymore. They're not headlining the SEC, blah, blah, blah. And, it's not Ohio State's fault. Penn State fell off the map, and their schedule just set up to where they didn't have any of the tough teams. The ones they did have ended up not being tough. Where last year, they played all the tough teams, and now this year, Indiana's played the tough teams. It's just the way it goes, but one thing about Ohio State is they have controlled every game they've been in, no matter who it is, and their defense is playing crazy football. Whenever they get to the big teams, which is going to be at the very least Michigan, and get into the CFP, a lot of people are complaining they shouldn't be getting in. And I said, well, if they're as bad as you think they are, you should want them in, because then your team will kill them. So, you won't have nothing to worry about because they're horrible. So, which they're not. So.
Yeah, I don't watch Ohio State all that much. I watch them just enough to be dangerous. But one of the comments that I heard, and I don't know if it's true or not, you can elaborate on this a little bit, was they were saying that once once the star receiver, went out of the game, that Sand looked much more average than what he looks with those receivers in the game. I don't know if that's
They had Carnell Tate did not play 2 games ago at all.
yeah.
And then this last game, he was out. Smith was in for about a quarter and a half, and then he stopped. And no, they're not divulging what's going on, So I don't know if it's
Right.
who knows what it is. Nobody's in a brace, nobody's limping, so who knows? And there was a time in the third quarter where Sand and some of the other receivers weren't on the same page. It was obvious.
Right.
One of the times he was being rushed. He rushed early, like most guys, and threw an errant ball. So he did look pedestrian by Sand standards, because this guy's throwing. I mean, he still did 72% of his passes in that game. So he was in the 80s before that little happened. But then he picked it up and they were okay. And then they put in the backup guy to finish the game out. So I think more than anything, it was a familiarity thing, but also I think there was obviously where though he thought the guy was going to this way and the guy went that way, kind of a thing. They're not on the same page and stuff. But more than anything, if he's rushed, like most quarterbacks, you get pressure on him, cause him to throw early, bad things happen. Ty Simpson, threw his pick six because he had a guy in his face, and just about every quarterback will do that. There's not too many quarterbacks that you can do that to and they can get out of it. Still, there are some, legendary players that played this game. So it'll be interesting to see if what Julian's saying. He's great in the pocket. He really is. He's not a great runner. He's not a horrible runner, but he's not a great runner. That's not his game. But he's great in the pocket. So you just got to get him a pocket to play in. He should be all right.
Yeah, you got to give him that protection. So
Yep.
who do you think right now? You have a lot of chatter back and forth about Ohio State, about the Big Ten, about the SEC, and all that stuff. So the Ohio State hasn't played anybody. So who do you feel is the best team that Ohio State's played this year?
The best team they've played this season, I think Washington was one of the better teams they played as far as just a quarterback that can run. They had a decent defense. They probably gave us the most fits out of anybody that was on the road, even though we won. Ohio State won the game. I think Michigan will be the best defense we're going to see when we play them. I don't think anybody is that I've seen them play. Illinois might be right up there too. They were, kind of good, and they, kept it close for a little while, but they just didn't have the depth, And then probably the best quarterback we've seen was Illinois' quarterback, because he's been around for a few years. He had some success against them, but again, they still won, and it wasn't a very close game at all. So, yeah, I think Washington, Illinois for sure, Michigan when we play them, and the rest of them, like Penn State, as a backup quarterback, and no fault of his, the other guy got hurt. Probably a decent defense we saw there, but maybe not as good as others. At least against us, they weren't. They played pretty good against some other teams. Michigan State, they gave them all fits last week, got their first win. So, yeah, as far as who Ohio State's played, I definitely think the best team all around was probably Washington, in my opinion.
Yeah, one of the reasons I ask that because if I'm a Ohio State fan, if I'm a realistic Ohio State fan, because so many fans are not, you are. That's why I can ask you these questions. But if I'm a Ohio State fan, I'm going to be just a little bit concerned going into the playoffs or even going into the Big Ten championship, because it's not their fault who was on their schedule, not their fault that Penn State fell off the earth and went through all the stuff that they went through, or the injured guys from Michigan and all that stuff. None of that is Ohio State's fault.
Right.
But they have had a very favorable schedule.
Yep.
And so, what's going to happen whenever they face Georgia, Texas A&M, I don't know, whoever else is up there.
There's A&M, Georgia, yeah.
Yeah, are you a little bit concerned of how that's going to change things?
Absolutely.
Competition?
Absolutely. I was concerned about it last year going into the Tennessee game in the CFP, because it just came off the worst horrible loss you could even think of, losing to a team that Pat McAfee said, if they don't beat Michigan by 4 scores, something's wrong. And then here we go out and lose 13-10. And I'm thinking, what's going on? And my first thought was what happened last year at the bowl game against Missouri, where we were garbage. We scored 3 points. Of course, we went out there and played incredible football against Tennessee right from the jump. Boom, 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 touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. And everybody's seen the rest. It was just nuts. So they're going to get adversity when they get in there, if not before. They might even see some adversity against Michigan, meaning they may not lose I don't hope they don't, but they might have a hard time winning that game by 4 scores, 3 scores, whatever, because it's on the road, could be bad weather. It's a best defense they'll play, and they haven't been battle tested. Part of me hopes they do, so they can get some battle testing to see what happens. Somebody hits sand in the mouth, so to speak, it knocks them down, does something, and gets them fired up and riled up, and having to overcome something. Maybe they're down at halftime. They got to come back and do something.
Yeah.
They're win or lose that game, they're going to get in anyways. So do I want last year to happen again? I don't want them to lose to them, but if we win the national championship, I guess I'll take it.
You don't want to lose to Michigan.
You're right. No, I don't.
We were talking about that earlier in one of our shows of praising Ryan Day and Ohio State and all that stuff. Going back to almost this time last year when they did lose to Michigan, and me and you had the conversation that if they did, of course they didn't, but if Tennessee would have beat them, I'm not even sure Ryan Day's still the coach, and you kind of thought.
I agree. I agree. If we, they almost had to do what they did for him to be where he's at. Not national championship. He kept his job. If they would have got because it was an orange invasion coming to it was Knoxville North, Neyland North. If all that would have happened, they would have kicked our butt in their own stadium. Dude, he wouldn't be here. I would like him or not, man. I think the guy's great. He'd be gone. He wouldn't survive that. I know he wouldn't have. I felt the same way about that when I saw Franklin lose to Northwestern. I said, he's gone tomorrow. Yeah, and he was. And he was.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would have felt the same way. Horrible loss to Michigan, and then you got all this. You got it at home. It all comes here, and then you get your butt stomped by Tennessee. He would have been gone. There's no doubt. I don't know who would have been. Jimbo Fisher, but our coach. I don't know who it would have been. So,
well, it was. Who knows? That could be. Wow. I didn't want to think about that. But anyways, it's going into all that, and why we kind of got off on this. But the thing with Ohio State last year, a lot of people, including myself, watching them at the end of the season, I thought they never should have lost to Michigan. And, the way they were going to some of the games, keeping them very close all through the first half and all that, it's like, well, why aren't they doing that? Why aren't they spreading it out? Why aren't they throwing the ball? Why are they running the ball up the middle? And then they got past that Michigan game, and all of a sudden they were doing all the things that I had heard everybody say. It's like, I think all these people that have, all these experts and fans and everything else been saying all this stuff. Let's try it. And
something weird.
It was a run. They literally looked like two different teams. They were running the ball up the middle 3 times and punting.
When they beat Tennessee, I'm like, okay, now we got to play Oregon at the Rose Bowl. It's like a home game. I didn't feel good about that one at all because at least the Oregon game we lost was a tight game all the way through, back and forth, and we lost by 1.
Well,
so I was expecting the same thing. I think most everybody was, and that game was over before I finished my Coke.
Oh yeah, that's that game in Oregon. At Oregon, one of the toughest places to play, and Ohio State could have went in there, and that's another game. The quarterback slides at the wrong time, or they have a chance to win that one.
Right.
So that was. I'm a little surprised at the blowouts with Tennessee and Oregon. I'm not surprised that they won, but I was surprised at the blowout.
Me too.
Yeah. So anyway, things are going to be interesting. So.
Yeah. Yeah, they need adversity. Every team does. It's not last year's team. Some guys were there, most are not. So they'll get it one way or another, and how they overcome it. We've been here, it's one thing about Julian saying is he's Joe Cool. What really makes me nervous more than anything, and it was just like last year. Last year we had injuries in the offensive line, starting with the Oregon game and going on through the season to the end. Is the offensive line play, and it was horrible against Michigan. So I'm nervous about that. And somehow or another, when they got to the CFP, their offensive line turned into the Dallas Cowboys with Emmitt Smith. Nobody could get in there, And I'm like, I don't know where this came from, but they
turned. I don't see them have. I said this last year, and I couldn't believe that way that it went. I don't see. They're not going to have a problem with Michigan. The big test is going to be in the Big Ten championship with Indiana. But then again, those conference games are losing a little bit of little bit of their pizzazz or
Yeah.
the competition factor, because it's kind of like, well, if we lose, we're still in. We're in.
I think they're gone. I don't think it's going to be next year, but I think we talked about this at work. I think within a couple of years or so, because it's going to get to the point where conference, the commissioners are like, by having two of our teams, the top two teams, play each other, we run the risk of one of those teams getting beat and then maybe getting beat so bad that we're losing them in the CFP. So it's almost like get rid of the conference games. Yeah, they're money bags now, but you know what? When the CFP is 16 for a few years, they won't be as money grabbers as they used to be. Is it 12 or 16 now? It's 12. 12. I'm sorry. It's those games may not be as watched as much as they were, because now you've got the CFP that you're getting into, and so I think with the ratings going down on those, I think they'll end them, and it'll be like the SEC and the Big Ten to start off, and the rest of them will just follow suit, and they'll just end the regular season, and these are our best teams. You're the champion, you're the runner-up, and there are no extra games, and then you look better going into the CFP without having if you play 4 conference championships, you got 4 teams losing. This way you don't have those teams losing potentially. So.
Yeah, with that, and the other thing comes to mind. I mean, it's not the same comparison, but like we have it in the bowl games where guys are setting out. I'm setting this one out and getting ready for the NFL. But I mean, could it be in the conference championship game? Hey, I'm going to start up my star, this guy or that guy, because in the following week or 2 weeks we're in the playoffs.
Yeah, so, I mean, if Mendoza goes down with a broken leg, that's horrible for Indiana. I mean, in the conference championship game. So it's like, and what so it's like, yeah, what's the more important thing here? Yeah, you want to win the conference, but maybe not having to win this game. That doesn't really need to happen to do that. Whoever had the better year. I don't know how they do it this year with 2 teams undefeated, or who knows how they do that. But yeah, I agree, and hopefully it doesn't come to that. But generally, that's what happens is something really bad happens, and then they're like, all right, we need to change this because we can't have that happen again.
Well, it's not. It's not an if. It's a win.
Right. That's what I mean.
It's going to happen. I mean, it's football. It's full contact. It's those joints, those knees, them elbows.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so it's definitely going to happen. So, I think, as things move forward, if they don't change it, they're going to diminish those games so much. Some of them. Some of them are certainly still could come into play of how things are going to play out, but they can't afford that 3rd loss, 4th loss, whatever it is. But in a case like Texas A&M or Indiana, Ohio State, I'll send my best guy out there to get hurt in that game whenever we can make a run in the playoffs and possibly win a national championship.
Right. I mean, you and I both seen, just a few years ago, all the extra bowl games, that aren't the CFP, 4, 3 games or whatever. Those are all, that one year Oklahoma had a great team, Florida had a great team, and all the guys went, aren't playing, they opted out, and Oklahoma except for the quarterback, and Oklahoma torched them, and probably cost that guy a draft place, for Florida.
That was one of the worst decisions that guy ever made.
It really was, because he had a great year.
Kyle Trask.
He had a great year, and then he picked six himself into the 3rd round or something.
Receivers, no offensive linemen. Yeah, I'll play. What are you?
Right.
Anyways, I just hate to see it, come to that. But I think that, like you said, I think at some point something's going to happen, or.
Not to mention the boys ponying up the money for these guys are like, hey, don't play him in that game. Hold him for the CFP. That's where the money is, So, yeah.
Well, I mean, whenever they got the money, because, they could fire a guy and all of a sudden they're coming up with
$9
million, $10 million, $30 million, whatever it is to buy these guys out. So, that's kind of crazy. Oh, we didn't talk about, James Franklin going to Virginia Tech.
Yeah, you just read my mind. I was thinking about that. I don't know if we wanted to get into it too much, but yeah, I kind of love to still see him stay in the Big Ten, because you like your conference to have great coaches. But boy, if you're going to pick a conference to go to, ACC is one of them. That place is a dumpster fire. He can go there and win next year potentially, because who's the best team in the ACC? No idea.
Kind of up for grabs right now, but yeah, we'll get into that at the end of the week whenever we talk about the games and all that stuff. So.
Cool. All righty. Well, hey, that's what we think. Give us some feedback of what you guys think, and we will. You can chat when we're on live. We love talking. So as you can see.
Sounds good. We'll see you Saturday.
All right. So this Saturday, big games, and we'll talk about it Saturday morning, right here on the Fletch Entertainment Network. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week.